Glad you enjoyed it, brother. Oh, you about to really be excited now, bro. Let me put my cash app out there for people, just in case they feeling friendly today. I do roll blood, but I don't know what the thing is. I think it's AK Randall's natural nature. I keep saying I'm gonna check it. All right, brother, I will. I keep saying I will. Y'all know I've been doing too much. I'm forgetting stuff. Oh yes, I can send you the Zelle, brother. Hold on a second. I just gotta get it. I'll do it before we maybe I'll read this one for you. Right? Hold on. Let me go back real quick. It's so quick. It went. Come on, let me go. Here we go. Okay. All right. Here I go. I done did it again. Okay. Okay. We're going to be doing some reading today, but I'll read this because, I'm going to have the auto reader on, guys. Prehistoric times, the Ark became the highly civilized people before the time of history. The Iberians in ancient times inhabited the western and the southern part of Europe, the northern part of Africa. In fact, all parts reach from the Mediterranean Sea. The Basque in Spain and France, and the little dark Welshmen and Scots and black Celts to the west of the Shannon River in Ireland, as well as the same kind of man, which were what? Black Celts, in Brittany and Aquitaine, in France, and in Gonchas of the Canary Islands, and the Berbers in Africa are all probably the remnants of that race. The Teuton inhabited the country north of the Iberians. He was phlegmatic, I think I'm saying that wrong, in temperament and dull in intellect, but brave, warlike, and given to athletic exercises. I've talked to you guys many times about the Teutons, but had bark warlike and given to athletic exercises. He was a flaxen-haired, large-limbered giant, fat and stupid. His greatest glory was to have killed a large number of savage animals. Owing to their strength, bravery, and size, they are a conquering race, but still did not have the genius to rule the lands that they conquered. They didn't have the intellect. They did not develop any high civilization of their own. They were self-reliant, willful, and independent. The intellect and the genius of the people of Central Europe came from the people farther north, probably the origin of the Aryan tribes, the origin of the Aryan tribes. Their deities were Thor, Odin, Frigga, wife of Odin, or Woden, and Valar. That's Black people. King Charles, Leviathan, government, commerce. Y'all know them from African. We know our people from them. Etruscan, African. We ain't shit. You talking about the black natives. Mind your business. Aboriginal to Africa and Europe, but they still was Aboriginals, black. Not for America though. Wake up. Open your ears and shut your mouth. You see? Germany. Prussia. Duke of Prussia. Duke Albert of Prussia. England and Ohio. England and Ohio. Let's go back. Oh my bad, I thought it said Ohio. It said Otto, actually. It said England and Otto the First. Here go them blending. Here go them blending with the Canadians. They had to blend in through Canada, through the Germanic and the Anglo tribes before they invaded the Americas. Let's get into it. Y'all ready? They got their ass whipped everywhere else. They had to get people to join in with them to help them out. Black native. You talking about black ass native. Oh, we got to read about it. This is the intro. Get to the real. What?
Who were the Germanic tribes?
History of Europe. Approximately 400 AD, a group of Europeans coming from the northern part of Europe, which you call Scandinavia, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and what you call Russia and Denmark. They came down in a series of invasions starting in 400 AD, and they smashed the Roman Empire. These invasions continued to push 500 AD, 600, 700, 800, 900, and they kept pushing down into Central Europe. When these groups of people who are beginning this invasion, they're called Germanic people. They will come in and exterminate the Europeans who are presently there, which were primarily Romans and Celts. Those Europeans you call Germanic people. 3 sets of these German people would go into what is now England or Great Britain. England and Great Britain was previously occupied by a group of Europeans called Celts, who are now survived as the Irish, the Scottish, the Welsh. So those Germans invaded into what you call England. The 3 groups that invaded the German groups, Angles, Saxons, and Jews. They will come in and invade what you call England and exterminate the Irish or the Celts. Their name will change into Englishmen. And when these Englishmen come to America, the name of these people will change to America. So the point that I'm going to their name will change into Englishmen. And when these Englishmen come to America, the name of these people will change to America. Their name will change into Englishmen. And when these Englishmen come to America, the name of these people will change to America. So the point that I'm going to point out to you, and you see this scheme, that Americans are Englishmen. Englishmen are Germans. They're Jews, Angles, and Saxons, no different than Hitler. So let's clear in your mind about who these
All right, we're talking about them blended damn tribes, them black natives coming in through Canada, through the English, old English nation, bringing in the Anglo-Saxon and the black Europeans coming in through Canada area. Let's go.
Europeans are, you call an American. They come from Germany. Two groups went into France, two German groups, the Burgundians and France. They exterminated most of the Celts there, and what Africans were there, and they are now called Frenchmen. So Frenchmen are Germans. Another group, two groups went into northern Italy and northern Spain. They are called the Visigoths and Vandals. Those white English, the white Spanish, and the white Italian, the white from Yugoslavia, they're German. Another group,
all Germans from one nation.
That group is called the Rus, R-U-S. They will comprise your white Russians, your Boris Yeltsin. So let's get a frame of reference historically clear that those Europeans who now you recognize as Englishmen, Americans, Germans, French, Spanish, Italian, Russians, they're all
Germans, not from the Germanic tribe.
There's no distinction. So don't mix them up about one of the colonizers is better than the other.
We're talking about the black
It
Jews.
is these Germans,
Yeah.
when they were able to occupy and conquer and control all of Europe, when they were able to kill off the Celts, push the Moors out, push the Arabs out from Yugoslavia, and push the Turks out, and they finally got control of Europe in its entirety. They fought each other from that point.
So, before we finish, I want you guys to hear this little bit of information. Let's go.
Historicism. For every image of the past that is not recognized by the present as one of its own concerns threatens to disappear irretrievably. 5th Thesis on the Concept of History by Walter Benjamin, written down just before fleeing from besieged Paris 1941. Contribution producing memory is a process of life work implying highly complex social faculties. Such faculties are meaningless if they are not shared. As long as a society defines its productive capacities by division of class, the process of manufacturing memory will tend to reproduce a herd of independent minds. 2. But as free association of free memories becomes a material possibility, it is bound to happen sooner or later. No authoritative demeanour of any whatever professional historian can preclude such a process of uncontrollable social creativity. Just as the process of manufacturing consent 3 in general, memory that matters under class rule is earmarked by unequal access to resources in the first place. Throughout the process, we can discern a hierarchical division of work. The mass communication of its outcome undergoes a sharp control for essential benchmarks of academic quality. What happens when some of these limits are reversed? What becomes of a city's east side for memory when the west side suddenly leaves its urban strongholds to be retaken only later by a dubious lot of self-made men pretending to be the successors of privilege historically done away with a century?
What you think?
What was the rule? What was was the wars that these German tribes fought? We go back 16. What was the wars that these German tribes fought? We go back 1600, the 30-year war, 100-year war. The Napoleonic Wars in 1800, it was England, France, Russia, and Germany, all cousins fighting each other. That Napoleonic War, they blamed on Napoleon, was a pan-European war, these Germans fighting among themselves. You go on to the Franco-Prussian War. So all of last century, from 1800 to 1900, was one series of a war in Europe, from one end of Europe to the other. They're killing each other. They continued this intra-ethnic war as World War I. Again, the same group, England, France, Germany, Russia, and they added their cousins to Yugoslavia. That's a pan-European, pan-Germanic war.
Pan.
They had a little break. They went at it again, World War II. A pan-European war.
Mm-hmm.
Germans fighting Germans.
Mm-hmm.
It is that wars that they had that made it possible for all people to begin to get independent. Remember, England, Spain, Portugal, England, France, and Germany, and US, they had colonies, right? Each of these countries can hold its colonies under its own structure. But because of the Napoleonic Wars, or those wars in 1800, followed by World War I and II, all of these European countries destroyed themselves to such an extent that none of these European countries could hold on to their colonial structure by themselves. So after World War II, they had to collectivize. They had to sit down together and say, look, we destroyed each other and weakened each other so much that we can't hold on to our colonial structure. We must collectivize.
Let's come together.
As white
come against them
to continue to control the world. In 1945, those European Germans, called Americans, English, and French primarily, later added on by the Germans, would sit down and say, look, we have to devise a military unit among us Germans to dominate these people of color. So they born NATO. North Atlantic Treaty Organization is an organization of Western European countries band together against the Africans, the Asians, etc., because they no longer individually could hold a colonial base. They needed a political structure in which they would collectively try to control you. So they formulated the UN. Now they need an international loan shark money scheme to get you. IMF, World Bank. Bretton Woods, 1945, America's now becoming the dominant country because the Africans are colonized, the Asians are colonized, and Europe is devastated. So the United States is calling the shots. So in 1944, United States Germans will call a conference called Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, and they will set up these three organizations.
And how many times have I told you guys about the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, where they would set this organization up that he's speaking about? I've shown you guys the proof. I've showed you the documents of them setting up the Bretton Woods Conference, setting up what? The embassy, setting up what? The UN that people think is over the United States. It's for the whole country. Hell no, the United States created it. I keep telling you guys. They are the ones that created and orchestrated the plan to construct these fake-ass continents.
What I want to do is to read for you briefly. This is from Al Gore, who is a European environmentalist. And listen to what they're talking about, the Marshall Plan. Immediately after World War II, this is Gore speaking history, Europe was so completely devastated. I'm quoting from Al Gore's book on the Global Marshall Plan as they review the Marshall Plan. You know what the Marshall Plan is, right? When America will try to help its European cousins. Immediately after World War II, Europe was so completely devastated. Well, you know, during World War II, they killed off about 75 million of their own people. They devastated the whole continent. That's not including the 25 million that they killed of themselves in World War I. So between World War I and World War II, they killed 100 million of themselves. Add on to that another 20 million that they kill of each other in the wars in 1800. And it was so bad in Europe that around 1850, that's when you got your mass migration of white people out of Europe to come to the Caribbean, to Central and South America and America. That's where you get your mass migration. So when you look at the killing of 125 million of their own people within a 100-year period and the mass migration, you understand why.
She wished she was even melanated, no matter which one of the melanated it was, right? Let's go to this real quick. A little more on the characteristics of the bourgeois society. Let's get into about another page or two of this, and then we're going to get into some very interesting information that goes right along with this.
Academic quality. They're socially isolated. To put it mildly, such an unappetizing role model suggests that our work might actually be little short of superfluous for the essential reproduction of. Looking backward might have become our work-related obsession. But living memory that matters, is made to help looking forward. It is not bound to remain as plump and petty bourgeois with the help of imported polyester as we encounter it today on Ukrainian marketplaces. The capricious artifact of popular memorizing happens to change daily in the dialectical bonfire of material interest clashing in public spaces. Socially relevant public memory has been witnessed to change by the hour in times of historical progress when the commodity trap suddenly fails to capture the fulminate faculties of modern minds. Upper-class manufacturing of public memory can never reach the potential power of popular amalgamation based on real material needs. 6. The ultimate check of modern popular memory is the gunpoint. And it remains one of the few privileges of historians to know how limited such a check might prove once the contradictions between subversive and rebellious memory strings have ripened to change the course of events. So do we really have to fill our modest niche with elegies problematizing memory itself to retain at least one last problem we can muse about freely? Currently, for every published combination of the analytic terms historical, detect a tenfold quantity combining the idea of historical memory with the clumsy and analytically insincere notion of ethnic identity. Even if you set out otherwise, your material interest might by now be vested thoroughly among the 9 out of 10. Where do you think you are? Ask the protagonists in Georgi Derligian's narration on class war in social memory in the Northern Caucasus Highlands, in a folk dance competition. 7. Derligian's critical faculties amalgamate a rare combination. Trained in glasnost Soviet privilege, he combines a taste for empiric contradictions derived from African field studies with some methodological achievements, British academic Marxism, and a posh reverence for bold French perspective vested in the Annals School. The outcome proves sellable as ordinary us American fast food, supplying e.g. the right-wing Fox channel with commodity expertism on Caucasian memory during those notorious 7 seconds intervals you are allowed to talk on US TV formats before being cut. Leaving the realm of the anecdotic in contemporary East-West Marxism, we are well advised to mind the actual place of empirically well-informed memory in the spaces defined by transcontinental class conflict. Akram Fuad Qadir does this with remarkable accuracy for the case of women migrants from Lebanon to the Americas and back during the very years surveyed by this essay. 8. In the course of conflict use events, the female protagonists of his manifold narrative eventually become a part of the Western Christian middle classes, and thus they have their part in shaping the outcome of the 20th century. 9. This, however,
Shaping the
had been by no
outcome.
means predetermined, as the author points out slyly. Quite to the contrary, her evidence puts material working conditions and their biography-forming effects on memory first. Notions of class-bound reproduction of individual memory for agency in the social sphere come in to take us a step further. Looking back on the secondary checks on memory, we perceive competing concepts of nation, sexualist role models, religiosity in a secularist context of exploitation, and the related monstrous collective pronoun. Ethnicity melt down curiously. They seem downsized to what they have actually been for the lives of the protagonists under scrutiny, mere matrices of almost ludicrous transparency, adaptable to whatever the material course of class and gender struggle forced upon their life choices. Whether a woman can or cannot sustain homosocial ties of friendship outside her house is of crucial importance for the class model she is likely to assimilate. In a similar motion towards the actual field of conflict and memory consolidation, a Denver-based team of anthropologically informed archaeologists has taken to excavate the material remains of the Ludlow battles in South Colorado class wars of the years 1913 and 1914. Curiously enough, deep in the American Midwest, digging up the bones and bullets of a long-ago working-class forming battle is not only a tax-financed pioneer research activity. Simultaneously, it has served as a learning ground for already several generations of history teachers graduating in Denver. What is state of the arts in the once Wild West is an outright no-go area within the Wild East, newly recreated on the Third World ruins of a once-second civilization. Actually, the shooting on the gold fields at the banks of the Russian River Lena, far east of Siberia, preclude the Rockefeller murders in Colorado by some crucial months in a very similar setting. In 1917 Memories of actually, the shooting on the gold fields at the banks of the Russian River Lena, far east of Siberia, preclude the Rockefeller murders in Colorado by some crucial months in a very similar setting. In 1917 Memories of Harkov working-class activists, this Lenski Obstrol was a most suggestive shortcut to their autumn 1905 experience. To be precise, the conflict in Colorado helped to check the deterioration of us Midwest manual workers' wages during some years following their legalist shooting in 1914. On quite another scale, the violent industrial conflict of 1912 in the parallel tent towns of the Russian Far East spurred an amalgamation of public memory in Harkov and similar hotspots of Russian industrial cosmopolitism that changed the course of world history in the 20th century. So, maybe the inquiry into memories contrary to current class rule is feasible only in cases of marginal importance. Let us probe the limits of a contrary motion, not just claim a bigger part of the cake but go for the whole damned bakery instead. Why Harkov? Can there be a critical mass of cosmopolitan working-class memory in a forlorn provincial town among Ukrainian backwaters? In 1912, just as in 2009, returning back to Europe from the Russian Far East, we can choose between two main destinations in the neat railway station of Vladivostok. Either you go north in Europe, i.e., take the train to Moscow, or you go south, i.e., take the train to Harkov. Choosing Harkov 6 years ago, I was confident to be able to relate my reading of working-class records with that of other cityscapes in the periphery of the October Revolution throughout the 20th century, Prague and Havana. The city of Harkov in 1905 is the capital of a minor southern province, but it witnesses a literally breathless and discontinued industrial growth. This remarkable dynamic and the legacy of a strong class-based stance in the civil wars following 1905 to 1927 enabled the cityscape to fulfill the function of a thriving avant-garde capital for the whole of Soviet Ukraine until 1934.
Thanks to America.
Already with the first upsurge of labor unrest around 1899, the civil-industrial complex of Harkov makes up a significant knot in the transcontinental network of Russian metropolis stretching from Lodz throughout Siberia right to the Pacific coast, the location of a spectacular defeat of Harkov conscripts and Harkov weaponry during the Russo-Japanese War. Following the Crimean invasion of the 1850s, the state-sponsored artificial greenhouse conditions for fostering most advanced techniques of capitalist production on a global scale constitute an important metropolitan advantage for the town in a key position to the southern periphery. But it is never Harkov alone, it is its modest role in an unprecedented metropolitan network of communication preying on Russian backwaters that constitutes the making of its militant working-class memory. Linked by intense railway communication of goods and people, these cities reinforce their industrialist grip on the vast rural backwaters stretching in between them. The ruling establishment had chosen to nourish a violent industrial revolution to contain social revolution. As social unrest continued in the countryside with a distinct patriarchal pattern, the urban workforce increasingly learned to see their task in associating to combine both social and industrial revolution. Ironically enough, the
Social
administrative
revolution.
measures to eliminate such visionary agency from the strategic townscapes of the boom and its long-drawn-out
Just
crash
as
from
important.
1905 to 1917 actually contributed substantially to implant a social knowledge about the possible dividend of
Implanting.
such combination within Harkov working-class realities. Factory inspectors were installed following the British blueprint to contain unrest and accord the factory regime with state paternalism. But soon, the makers of the tools learned to use this public institution as a pretext to make their production realities an issue of public argument. Categorical death threats and their long drawn-out execution by transporting to Siberia were meant to shut down the toiling folk in their traditional ghetto within feudal society. But heeding to similar dialectics, the nationwide transportation/deportation regime supply chain needed Harkov as an important transitory post before further forced resettlement to Siberia.
Damn Germans.
Ironically enough, several generations of working-class organizing drives were thus brought in by repressive measures from industrial hotspots in the West and the industrial capitals of Petersburg and Moscow, where discussions and organizational memory were in a notably higher state of alertness than Russian depth. Glub Rossage. Going through the more than 1,000 life histories of workers from the late 19th century collected in Harkov archives, we find that a major fraction of the initially rural Russian exodus reached Harkov after suffering hunger and homelessness in other related towns monopolizing the profits of the giant railway. Spidernet, which Nekrasov precisely recorded to have one major entrepreneur, Tsar Golod socially engineered hunger. It was characteristically heavy industry, iron reprocessing, and machine building, which constituted the crystallization of Harkov's workforce and its precarious access to giant short-term concentrations of purchasing power.
Interesting, huh? Let's move on.
Dedication.
Because I want to get to the next topic. In
olden times it was customary to dedicate the children of the brain to ignorant, cruel kings and queens. But I hereby reverse that custom, by dedicating this volume to those who are not ashamed to work, and to those who are not afraid to think and speak their honest thoughts, the only useful and the only truly great, to the men and women who have enriched and beautified the world, to the women and men who have torn the chains from body and brain, to those who labored, lived and died for the happiness and rights of man, to those whose trembling flesh has felt the burning lash and chilling chain, to those who love the universal equality and eternal rights and liberties of man, woman, and child, to those who would redeem the human race with reason, liberty, and lore, to these, I dedicate these words and lines. YSC Cross. Contents. Chap page. Introduction. 7.2. Science of And so I concluded to do it myself. Thought I would tell you all about the Negro. They have character, others have some have told agitation and suggestions. Introduction. I have heard and read a great many lectures on the Negro and the sunny South, but not one really worth reading. Some have told all the good about the sunny South and forgot the bad. Some have told all the bad about the sunny South, but forgot the good. Some have taken great pains to describe the beautiful scenery and the delightful climate. Some have told us all about the tropical fruits and the beautiful birds. Some have described the cotton and the cane some the lovely flowers. Others have exaggerated the facts and multiplied the faults, while still others have suppressed the truth, and utterly failed to tell us anything really worth knowing, or of real value about the sunny South. They have characterized this great picture of nature as a little artist would daub the canvas and prostitute the painting of a genius. They have failed to tell us the actual character and real conditions of the real sunny South. And so I concluded to do it myself. Thought I would tell you all about the Negro and something about the sunny South. During the Civil War, a Confederate soldier met an Irishman in the state of Tennessee. Whereupon the Irishman asked, ****, and where are you from?" And the Confederate replied, ***, I am from the state of South Carolina." "Thank the Lord. Where are you from?" "I am from the United States of America. Thank God," was the Irishman's reply. So,
The
I will be
Irishman
allowed
from
to
the
say
United
right here
States of America.
that I am exceedingly glad to have been born among the West Virginia hills and educated in the Great West and the Grand North, no inconsiderable part of the United States of America, the first and greatest republic beneath the eternal stars. I love the East, the West, the North, the South. I love the great republic, and no sectional feeling courses through my veins. With a mixture of regret, I am proud to be a member of the peerless Anglo-Saxon race. Yet, I am both fortunate and unfortunate in being a member of that race, fortunate in not receiving the outlandish cruelties and crimes my race has imposed upon the Negro race, unfortunate in being a member of the wicked race that imposed these awful crimes. But I shall now speak principally of that southern section of the South, which lies east of the Mississippi and south of the Ohio and Potomac rivers, better known as Dixie's Land. Now our theme divides itself into two great questions. One is the social subject, comprising the industrial and educational questions of the whites in the South. We will first consider some of the customs and conditions of the whites in the sunny South. And let us fly out on the wings of reason, into the air of liberty and the sunshine of thought, for in the intellectual firmament there is space for every star, upon the intellectual ocean there is room for every storm. The bravest condors love to soar above the clouds, where the raging storm rides across the dome on thundering wings of fire. The boldest eagles delight to perch and poise among the highest cliffs and crags, where frowning peaks are capped and crowned with perpetual ice and snow, lit with the sun and stars. As an introduction to our theme, let me paint a scenic picture of the sunny South. Mother Nature, the queenly creator of all arts and artists, has flung apart the sweeping curtains to the southern sky. And we behold the swelling scene, a perfect gem and masterpiece of natural art on the stage of a world. In the theater of space and time, we see the scenes and situations of the blacks, the plots and plays of the whites. We view the lurid landscape. The background to our picture is the sunlit heavens and the southern seas. We see the tropical fruits and forests, where cling and creep the trailing vines, hanging and swinging in sweeping folds, while gorgeous butterflies and bees and birds are flitting from place to place, and sweetly singing among a wilderness of flowers. We see the countless Negroes raising fruits and grains, and we see them toiling in the fields of cotton, rice, and cane.
Really?
We see the stately ships and vessels steaming up the roaring rivers and rushing out to sea. We see the polished piston give the ponderous engine motion, as it roars and races through the land, where the frightened flocks and herds are grazing on 1,000 sunlit hills. We see the southern cities, villages, and towns, which glow and gleam like gems on every vale and plain. We see the pleasant valleys and the sunny slopes covered with flowers. And we see the lofty Allegheny ranges, whose granite gates are smitten from eternal quivers of the sun. But while this matchless scenery gives throb and thrill, pulse, and motion to the delighted mind, there is a mightier scene which looms up before us in peerless splendor, and ebbs and flows much nearer to the shores. Low introduction of the human soul, and that is a view of the singular manners, customs, ways, and means of our fellow citizens in the sunny South. The strange mingling of comic incident and dramatic action in the great tragedy of life and death.
Why is it showing up double?
But no word painter can truly picture or portray the many-colored lights and shadows of the human heart. For man is as many-sided as rocks are many-formed. So let us plunge right into the science and philosophy of our subject. Let us fathom the lowest depths of thought, cast aside the dregs, the dross, and chaff aleph, and produce the uncounted gold and unnumbered pearls and gems. In the first place, we must correct a sad and serious mistake. And here is the mistake: we too often judge the modern South by the ancient South. But we should remember that the sunny South of today is far from the sunny South of 40 years ago. We sometimes forget that the onward march of progress has revolutionized the world, forget that man is an intellectual growth, ever undergoing the influence of circumstances, time, and place and change. During the Civil War, the South attracted the attention of the civilized world. The peculiar manners and customs of its people became perfectly familiar to all mankind. The Northern soldier even, who had marched and slept and fought upon the Southern fields of battle, returned to the arms of his family fireside, where he related many thrilling, startling stories about this mysterious sunny South. By the exciting scenes of mighty events, the memory is strengthened to retain the pictures of the past. So the great event of the Civil War so deeply impressed these stories upon the mind of man, so firmly fixed them in the very nature of his being, that they linger in the open mouth of rumor, or fall as facts from the withered lips of tradition. They bribe the judgment, misdirect the understanding, and make it impossible for us to see the present conditions of the South as they actually are. While these curious, entertaining stories vividly described the South in days of old, nothing could be further from the truth at the present time. So to do justice to the human race, we must cast aside these misconceptions and mistakes, and behold the modern sunny South as it stands before the glimmering light of the 20th century. Science of Northern civilization. While the South has made considerable progress in the last 30 years, it can in no way be compared with the North. In its educational advantages, in its social conditions, in its industrial pursuits.
Hold on, this is getting on my. I don't know why it's showing this certain words highlighted. Maybe that was from a search earlier. Yeah, let's get back to it. That was irritating me.
Science of Northern civilization. While the South has made considerable progress in the last 30 years, it can in no way be compared with the North. In its educational advantages, in its social conditions, in its industrial pursuits, in its political institutions, and in its intellectual development, it is indeed far behind the North. This is not only recognized by the North, but it is cheerfully admitted by the brightest and the best, by the intelligence and wisdom of the South itself. During the last 30 years, the North has made the greatest discoveries and inventions, reached the rarest accomplishments and attainments, fathomed the greatest depths, and gained the greatest heights of civilization and enlightenment of any nation on the globe. They have wrought the grandest triumphs and achievements of the heart and soul. They have subdued the subtlest and profoundest laws of nature. They have conquered and enslaved the most powerful forces of the universe, that they may do the work of the world. They have mastered the most marvelous miracles and mysteries of hand and brain. Furthermore, they are among the noblest, greatest, grandest people that ever touched this orb of dust and dew.
How great.
Since there exists this remarkable difference between the North and the South, since they have mastered them, they have wrought the grandest triumphs and achievements of the heart and soul. They have subdued the subtlest and profoundest laws of nature. They have conquered and enslaved the most powerful forces of the universe, that they may do the work of the world. They have mastered the most marvelous miracles and mysteries of hand and brain. Furthermore, they are among the noblest,
of the mind
greatest,
and hand.
grandest people that ever touched this orb of dust and dew. Since there exists this remarkable difference between the North and the South, let us dig down to the very bedrock to discover the cause. Let us undermine the foundations of progress and drink from the springs of action, before we launch upon the waves of a mighty theme. What is the cause of this striking contrast between the North and the South? How can we account for this vast difference between the advancement of the South and the civilization of the North? Why is it that these two sections of the greatest republic on this planet are so familiar with, and yet so apart from each other? They are traversed by the same railroads. They are both ringing with the music of the same telegraphic wires. They are both protected by the same beautiful banner of the free. They both have equal access
Now
to the
this
fountains
part
of
too much.
liberty
They're
and
going
learning.
far, too
They
far
both
to the
speak the
left.
same
Slow down.
language, have the same facilities of commerce and transportation, have substantially
Oh,
the
really?
same unbounded natural resources, have equally fertile and productive soils,
Oh,
and equally
Lord.
valuable
Oh,
products.
Lord.
The same sun shines, the same showers fall on north and south alike, and yet the contrast is so amazing,
Yes,
so
brother.
awakening, and so great,
You're right.
that when one travels from the north to the south, or from the south to the north, he feels as though he had been carried to a foreign land. What is the reason, the cause of this? It is all a question of physical vigor and mental strength, all a question of physical activity and intellectual development. And this peculiar physical and mental condition is the consequence of the climate, the inevitable result of nature. For this nobody is responsible, nobody to blame. It is all a problem of elemental forces, of natural surroundings and social customs, ways, and means, which mold and shape the minds of men. It is all a matter of climatic influence and the peculiar social conditions to which the South is naturally bound. If then, it is a climatic and social phenomenon, let us seek the source to demonstrate the origin and beginning of this strange civilization in the sunny South. How can we account for the rapid strides and wondrous progress of the North? Let us see. It is all a perfectly natural consequence, and we account for it by perfectly natural causes. The summers of the North are short, the winters long and cold. During the summer, men think of the bitter blasts and eternal snows of winter. They see the sun sinking in the southern sky, their homes covered with mantles of ice and snow. They feel the pangs of frost and storm. They have shared the happiness of the fireside, and they have breasted the gales and tempests from the icy halls of the north. They know what it is to pleasantly spend their winter evenings, surrounded by loving friends and
Brother, you
useful
came in
books,
so late, so
with
you
carpets
just,
on the floors,
I ain't gonna say
pictures on the
nothing.
walls, where the lights and shadows
You
meet.
covered all of
They are
that you're
thrilled
talking
with the
about.
melody of music, and their every hour is jeweled with the joy. They thus realize the difference between the pleasure and peace of providence, and the grief and pain of indolence. They know that a summer of idleness and prodigality means a winter of poverty and pain, of
They
desolation,
ain't said nothing wrong
despair,
in this
and
book.
death.
None but true.
They know, too, that a summer of industry and economy means a winter of solid comfort, of perpetual joy.
The North is where they made everything, where they came in through. All the up in the north, which is really the South, but they say North. So we know when they say this, the North, they're talking about the South. But we're going to finish this page and get to the next
are thus
book.
aroused and actuated by a sense of duty to provide for the yet to be. This sense of duty is the engine of activity, and activity is the mother of all wisdom, genius, art, and song. It has filled the world with wealth and thought, and from its deft and tireless hands the beautiful is balm. Another thing.
Okay, let's go. This right here, this one I've been waiting to get to. This is the best information that anyone could ask for. A lot of clarity as well, like so many others, but this one has a lot of other additional information, confirmation, so on and so forth. So please pay attention, guys. This is right here is the very important part of this bill. All of it is important, but you have to be here from the beginning. Let's go.
The Negro in his lair. From early childhood I have been a constant observer and an ardent admirer of the wondrous works of God. In my early days birds, bees, bugs and flowers were a never-ending source of pleasure to me, and when I was a lad of more mature years, I have lain for hours in the shade of some friendly tree and played with a toad frog or June bug until the dinner horn blew, when I was erroneously supposed to have been diligently engaged in hoeing cotton. In after years, I have sat silently on the seashore and watched the tide ebb and flow. I have climbed the lofty mountains and looked down upon the clouds. I have then descended into the Mississippi Valley and stood on the banks of the world's greatest river and watched its turbulent waters roll by. I have also looked above into the starry-decked dome of heaven and gazed upon the faraway planets and comets performing their stupendous and harmonious revolutions, and have seen written on the face of all things the glory and wonder of the supreme architect of the universe, but I have always regarded the Negro as his masterpiece. The Negro stands alone in a class by himself, and while the Yazoo and Mississippi Delta is peculiarly suited to his needs, Yet, he can adjust himself to any kind of climate or conditions and live and die happy under the most trying circumstances. He can lie down beneath the scorching rays of a noonday sun and sleep the sleep of the 7 sleepers of old without suffering any evil effects from it whatever, or he can weather the fiercest winter gale, clad only in a pair of cotton overalls and a blue jumper. He can also wear an overcoat to a 4th of July celebration, or a pair of linen pants and an alpaca coat to a Christmas tree and be perfectly comfortable.
Oh, good old Southern
as
man.
strange as it
Good
may
old
seem,
Negro.
anybody's clothes will fit him and look nice on him. King Solomon, in his declining years, when he had become thoroughly
King
disgusted
Solomon.
with high society and
Listen.
fast living, said that there was nothing new under the sun, that he had gone all the gates and had seen the whole show, from the free
I hope this
exhibition
isn't
to
a
the
shock to you guys. King Solomon. Remember, we read and went through the whole information about King Solomon, the mines and everything. King Solomon in America. Go back and watch that build if you haven't.
grand concert,
Let's go back.
and that
I
there
wanna
was
hear this
nothing
part
to
again.
it. King Solomon, King. He can also wear an overcoat to a 4th of July celebration, or a pair of linen pants and an alpaca coat to a Christmas
Old
tree and
country
be
nigga.
perfectly comfortable. And, as strange as it may seem, anybody's clothes will fit him and look nice on him.
Yeah.
King Solomon, in his declining years, when he had become thoroughly disgusted with high society and fast living, said that there was nothing new under the sun, that he had gone all the gates and had seen the whole show, from the free exhibition to the grand concert, and that there was nothing to it, or words to that effect. But it will be remembered that King Solomon never had any Negroes to deal with, nor ever tried to make a cotton crop on buckshot land after an overflow, or he would have had a new problem to solve every day of his eventful career. There is nothing else like the Negro anywhere under the sun. He sees all things, hears
like
all
him.
things, believes all things, and has implicit faith in everything he sees or hears, and stands ready at all times to step aboard of anything that comes along, from a young mule to a flying machine. Wireless telegraphy is nothing new to him. He has used it for ages. Every Negro's mouth is a transmitter and every ear a receiver.
What?
If anything of importance happens on a plantation tonight, every Negro for 40 miles around will know all about it by morning.
Everybody.
But if you happen to be
telepathy,
a peace officer, do not ask him anything about it, for that has a tendency to make him forgetful and causes him to close up like a clam. If you ever arrive at a peace office, wireless telegraphy is nothing new to him. He has used it for ages. New. Every Negro's mouth is a transmitter and every ear a receiver. If anything of importance happens on a plantation tonight, every Negro for 40 miles around will know all about it by morning. But if you happen to be a peace officer, do not ask him anything about it, for that has a tendency to make him forgetful and causes him to close up like a clam. If you ever arrive in a Delta town, on the train on Sunday, and the whole colored population is not at the depot to meet you, do not get off, for you may know of a certainty that some catastrophe has just struck that town. Saturday is the Negro's day by special custom and common consent, and if you have any business to attend to in a Delta town, on Saturday, attend to it early and get off of the street before you get hurt. A Negro cannot see you Saturday, unless you owe him something, and if you get in his way, he is liable to step on you, sit down on you, or back you up against a brick wall and smother you to death. He does not usually do these things, or any of them, through any evil design, as many people sometimes suppose, but he simply cannot help it if you get in his way, for he is busy and cannot look out for you. Saturday is his Ration's day, and news exchange day, and in addition to having all of those things on his mind, he has to shake hands with every other Negro in town, and hug every Negro woman he meets, and you had her take out an accident policy or get off of the streets. The standard rations for a Negro is a peck of cornmeal, 3 pounds of salt meat, 2 pounds of sugar, 1 pound of coffee, 1 gallon of black molasses, and 1 plug of either red coon, blue mule, Dixieland, or wild goose chewing tobacco a week, but he can consume all of this at one sitting if necessary, or if he is working for you and boarding himself, he can live a week on 3 soda crackers, a box of sardines,
Now
and
that's some
5
crack.
cents worth of cheese. In other words, his stomach is built on the same general plan of an
Chill,
old-fashioned accordion, and either contracts or expands
turning it
according to the pressure brought to bear upon it. He is also immune to nearly all kinds of poisons, and can swallow the most deadly drugs with impunity. I remember of having a Negro working for me one time who was having chills and who was suffering from severe backaches. I got him a bottle of chill tonic to take, and a bottle of liniment to rub his back with. The liniment was labeled in boxcar letters, poison, for external use only, and I cautioned him about it when I gave it to him, but for 3 days and nights before I found it out, he had been rubbing his back with the chill tonic and taking a teaspoonful of the liniment 3 times a day before each meal with excellent results. On another occasion I was sick myself and had a Negro to wait upon me, and the doctor in charge of my case opened a can of antiphlogistin to make a plaster for my side, and left the can on the kitchen table, and when my Negro went in to get his supper, he mistook it for a can of peanut butter and ate the whole of it without ever discovering his mistake. The Negro does not lay up treasures on earth where moth and rust would corrode them or where thieves might break through and steal, but when he has any money or other valuable thing he immediately puts it in circulation, and the things in which he usually invests are never of a very permanent or lasting nature. He spends much money each year for legal and medical advice, presumably for the purpose of finding out what he ought to do so that he may go and do the opposite, for it is a well-known fact that a Negro was never known to shut a gate or follow any body's advice about anything.
That's right.
He is also an ardent admirer of the work turned out by the dental surgeon, and down deep in every Negro's heart there is a secret longing to someday have a gold tooth in front, one on a plate so that he can take it out and look at it and put it back in place at will. He is likewise a great admirer of art, and in nearly every Negro's
y'all
home,
thought that
be it ever so humble,
that these
their
young
hands
black
a life
men,
size.
y'all thought these young black men wearing gold fronts and their teeth was ghetto and hood? They've been doing this. My grandma had gold teeth, like literally. She was from Tennessee. She had gold teeth in her mouth when I was a kid. Like, for real. This is normal. Delta people. Listen closely.
Crayon portrait of himself on the wall right opposite the front door, where you will be sure to see it as you enter. The rest of his surplus money he usually spends for entertainment, preferably an excursion, but anything else in motion will do. I have frequently stood on the street corner, on a cold cloudy winter day, and watched as many as 50 Negroes who did not have, on an average, 50 cents each, and none of whom had on enough clothes to flag a handcar, clinging to a merry-go-round as it went round and round, grinding out that well-known and much-beloved melody, "Oh, Bill Bailey, why don't you come home," and their front teeth shining like the keys of a piano, while hundreds of others, who did not have the price of a ride, were standing in the half-frozen mud shoe-mouth deep, cheering them as they came round. All things are pleasing to him. A circus or a funeral is equally enjoyable, but a protracted meeting followed by a big baptizing or a term of the circuit court followed by a public hanging is his chiefest delight.
You hear that?
The Negro was once the white man's slave, but that was only for a short time, and was a part of the great scheme which God had in mind to better prepare him for the enjoyment of the things which he meant to bestow upon him in the future.
That sounds like them talking about the government setting up a plan for your ass to be up under their indoctrination and their wardship, huh? Ain't that what that sound like? That's what it said. That's what it said to me. Let's go. Oh, they got more of this thing. Let me refresh it. Oh, no. Not right now. Let me refresh this. Let's get rid of that. I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay, let's go.
Very permanent or lasting nature. It and put it back in place at will. He is like the rest of his surplus money he usually spends for entertainment, preferably an excursion, but anything else, all things are pleasing to him. The Negro was once the white man's slave, but that was only for a short time, and was a part of the great scheme which God had in mind to better prepare him for the enjoyment of the things which he meant to bestow upon him in the future.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
By long and close association with the white man, the Negro has learned all of his ways, and can read at a glance his
That's
innermost thoughts,
crazy. Oh my
and can now
gosh,
size
the
him
star.
up and classify him just as accurate
She
as a
had a
cotton
gold
buyer
tooth, and
does the
she had
different grades
the
of
one next to
cotton,
it had the
and
star
can
in
do
it.
it
That's
much
crazy.
quicker.
You said that. That's
He is
tripping me
no
out.
longer a slave to man or mammon, and verily that scripture which says, "The first shall be last and the last shall be first," has already come to pass, and the Negro now has a reserved seat in the front row. If any good things are to be had, he is sure to get his share. One day a Negro asked me if I thought a Negro had a soul. I told him that I most assuredly did, and if he did not have one, it was the only thing I had ever heard of a white man having, that a Negro did not get it if he stayed with him long enough.
You hear this shit?
The Negro
You know
has
that's
no
ass
great
backwards.
problems to solve.
Is that crazy?
There is no race question so far as he is concerned. He enjoys the society of all races, ages, and nationalities, and will mingle with any of them. He enjoys with equal pleasure the companionship of a 5-year-old white boy or an aged Chinaman who can neither speak or understand a single word of English, for in either of those cases he gets to do nearly all of the talking. The tariff question or the currency question does not interest him in the least. Silver is his standard, and he does not want any other kind of money. Neither does the Mexican situation worry him. All of those things are the white man's troubles. But if the white folks want to whip Mexico or anybody else for any cause, or without any cause for that matter, and will furnish him the arms and ammunition, and will back him up in it,
right, for a
he will
short
be
time,
glad
only
to
for a short time.
do it for them. The road question was the only question that ever gave the Negro any real trouble, but that was when he was subject to road duty 10 days out of every year. But happily for him, the roads of the Delta are now being worked by taxation, and all he has to do is to pack them down after they have been constructed. Neither does the levees or the want of levees bother him any. That is some more of the white folks' trouble. If we have an overflow or do not have one, it is all right with
a lot of truth, but
him.
A lot of BS. You got to hear it.
If we do have one, he is the first to have a boat and get out into it and paddle around from morning until night with the blessed assurance that there will be no work done while it lasts, and that he will draw his rations from his landlord or from the government, and sometimes both.
Right.
Until the water
subsides. They ain't never went away. They the ones, the
Whenever
roaches.
a Negro tires of country life, he moves to town, acquires a charcoal bucket and a tailor's goose, forms an alliance with some white man's cook, and with his living thus assured, he opens a cleaning and pressing establishment.
Period. That's it.
He then gets out Monday morning and gathers in the Sunday clothes of all the white clerks in town, and after wearing them himself every night during the week, he gets up early Saturday morning and treats them to a gasoline bath, and flattens them out with a red-hot iron and rushes them home to their owner so that he may wear them Sunday, collects $1.50 for his services in that behalf, and goes on his way rejoicing. But should there be any special function in town Saturday night which he wishes to attend, he holds back the best suit of clothes which he happens to have on hand and wears them to that, and carries them home Sunday morning, if he should wake up in time. Otherwise its owner can lay in bed over Sunday, and he will bring the clothes back the following Monday. If perchance his fancy does not run to cleaning clothes, he gets himself a gasoline stove and other paraphernalia wherewith to defeat the vagrant statute, and sets up a lunch counter where he serves all such as care to come his way, irrespective of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, with hamburgers, hot catfish, and beef sausage, and sometimes sweet spirits of fermenty on the side. But should neither of these vocations appeal to him, he usually opens a colored barber shop with a pool room and a crap table in the rear, and proceeds to enjoy life until the city officials become obnoxious to him, and he then goes back to the quiet country life, which is usually right after the Christmas holidays, and joins himself to a cotton planter for a period of 12 months or more, and by his certain written contract duly executed in duplicate, obligates and binds himself, heirs and assigns, to cultivate and gather a crop of cotton on the land therein described, and on the strength thereof, proceeds to eat up anywhere from $5 to $300 worth of grub while he is waiting for the ground to get dry enough to plow. And it very frequently happens that when the trees begin to bud, and when the birds begin to whistle, and the grasshopper begins to sing, Mr. Negro is seized with wanderlust, and he suddenly disappears, and the people who once knew him no more forever. Every Delta town also has its full quota of Negro women, who like the lily, toil not, neither do they spin, yet the Queen of Sheba in all of her glory was never clad like unto one of them. Surely the Negro is fearfully and wonderfully made, and his ways are past finding out. Called a coon. Nearly everyone knows, in a general way, that there is, in all of the southern states, a certain small animal closely allied to the bear, that is listed in Webster's dictionary as RAC coon, and they also know, or should know, if they have been south of the Ohio River, that this animal has long since lost the RAC and is now known as just plain simple coon, which is pronounced coon. They also know, in the same general way, that there are many Negroes in the same locality and that they are often referred to as coons, but not all of them know the reason why. It is argued by some well-known scientists that all men, irrespective of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, are lineal descendants of a prehistorical bald-faced monkey. And while I do not subscribe to that doctrine, still, I must admit that there are many men who, from their facial
The
expressions,
bald-faced
mental
monkey.
achievements, and muscular movements, seem to bear out this doctrine, and whenever I meet a man who claims to be a grandson of a baboon or an orangutan, I always take it for granted that he knows, or ought to know, more about his own family history and ancestors than I do, and for that reason, I never argue the question with him and accept his statement as to his individual case as being true. But be that as it may, the colored brother also bears many striking resemblances to the coon, not so much in facial expressions as the marked similarity of habits and feet. They each have very dark India rubber feet built on the same identical pattern, differing
India
only in
rubber
size,
feet.
and they each have an ungovernable appetite for a certain species of southern fish commonly
That's
called the
crazy.
grunnel, and which is
Whoa.
13 found in great
Hold on,
numbers
let
in
me
all
run that
shallow
one
lakes
back.
and cypress
I don't
springs.
remember that. Hold on,
Both
hold
they
on.
each have very dark India rubber feet built on the same identical pattern, differing only in size, and they each have an ungovernable appetite for a certain species of southern fish commonly called a grunnel, and which is 13 found in great numbers in all shallow lakes and cypress brakes. Both the Negro and the real coon each have a great fancy for all kinds of domestic fowls, and any experienced Negro houseboy, or yard man, can go into your poultry house the darkest night that ever descended upon a lost and sin-cursed world, and tell the kind, age, grade, and sex of all fowls therein by deftly running his fingers
Exactly.
over the toes on the roost pole, in the same manner that a musician tests
Glad
the
to
tone of a
enjoying it,
piano by
brother.
running his fingers over the keys, and can do it without ever disturbing their lightest dreams. Neither the Negro or the coon ever suffer from insomnia while the sun shines, and can sleep soundly anywhere during the day wherever
What?
they may be, whether that be on a barren island in the midst of the sea or in a rolling mill. But when darkness settles down upon the earth, they each become active and wide awake, or in the language of the poet, the RAC coon is a mighty man, he rambles in the dark, he never knows what trouble is, till he hears old Rattler bark. The same beautiful
Okay,
thought
so
so
they
aptly
slap your
expressed
ass
by
in the
that
face and wake you up.
author in reference to the coon is also applicable to the Negro,
Ah.
but the words should be revised so as to read, the Negro is a mighty man,
Ooh,
he
they cut
rambles
some
in
of
the
my
dark,
stuff out.
he never knows what trouble
That's
is,
crazy.
till he hears the captain's automatic 44 begin to bark. From time immemorial, the Negro and the coon have been closely and intimately associated together, and be it said to the credit of the former, that they have certainly led the latter a merry chase, as will readily be seen by the number of pelts of the latter tacked onto the sunny side of the cabin of the average plantation Negro. Well do I remember, when I was a small
They
boy,
ain't won't even let
just
me put it
beginning
in
to
the
study
chat.
the glorious history of my country, that the thing that impressed me most of all about the picture of the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln, the great American statesman, and the emancipator of the
Melungeon.
Negro, was the coon skin tacked on the outer wall of his humble cottage, and I now know the significance of that picture, and further know that none other than a master hand of a true son of the bright and sunny South executed it, because every Southern man knows that no picture that pertains anything connected with the Negro in any way, be it ever so slight or indirect, is ever complete without a Coonskin showing up somewhere in the background. Whenever it becomes necessary to catch a Negro, or a coon for any purpose, the same methods are employed in each case. There are 3 ways by which either can be caught, namely,
Right, brother. That's
by
why I can't
traps,
get no damn
by
rest.
still
Then I'm
hunting,
up all day.
and with hounds. If a trapper wants to catch a coon in a trap, he either baits it with sardines, salmon, or some other kind of loud-smelling canned fish, or he baits it with some bright object, say a piece of broken plate about the size of a silver dollar, or a little piece of new tin, and if a coon passes that way, he will most likely fall a victim of either his appetite, or his curiosity. He simply cannot resist the temptation. If an installment man or a peddler wishes to trap a Negro for his pelt, he goes about it in the same manner. He first shows him some flashy plated jewelry, lace curtains, hand mirrors or safety razors, and if none of these things will land him, he goes out to his wagon and gets a can or bottle of something and opens it up and sticks it under the Negro's nose and lets him smell it for a few minutes, and his downfall is then assured. When a Negro wants a coon for table purposes, he either locates his den and hangs around and shoots him when he comes out, or else he goes after him on the ground, with a pack of blue speckled hounds, and runs him down.
Period, brother.
But in either case he gets him just the same. If a white man wants to catch a Negro for the purpose of lynching him, or sending him to jail, he uses the same simple coon tactics on him. He either locates the house where the Negro's lady friend is stopping and waylays that until he catches the Negro slipping in or out some morning before day, and nabs him, or else he gets the state's bloodhounds and runs him down. I do not claim, nor do I believe, the Negro is any blood relation to a coon, but on account of the similarity of their habits, and the long and close connection existing between them, the Negro has long since been aptly termed a coon. A Negro's version of heaven and hell. One Sunday night in the month of August, some years ago, I was passing by Mount Everest Colored Church. The doors and windows were open and the congregation was singing, "God showed Noah by the rainbow sign, no more water, but the fire next time." And as they finished the last stanza, the Reverend George W. Flowers, a minister of ebony hue, and who was an acquaintance of mine, arose and began to address them, as follows: "Brethren, and sisterin, my discourse dis even am gwine to be on the beautifulness of heaven, and the horrifulness of hell, and one or the other of dem 2 things ought to reach every man, Oman, and Chile in this vast assemblyment. My text am like the brains of the most of my hearers here tonight, somewhat scatterin, but the thought that I wishes to convey to you am gwine to be more consummated. And to the pint. My text am scattered all through this good old book from kiver to kiver, like chicken feed in the straw, and if any of you smart Alex doubts anything that I has to say here to you here tonight, you can take this book down and search out the vital truths for yourselves, after I am through with my expostulations. I wishes to further
brother.
say, that I sees in this congregation, a big flock of black sheep without a shepherd, one in which the blind am tempted to lead the blind. The very opening song that you has just sung show that you am following after false doctrine.
DJ
And I
got some
must just
words,
as
okay?
well tell you now as any other time, by way of introductory, that my remarks to you on this auspicious occasion am not gwine to be long the old and well-beaten path followed by all of my prepossessors, but am gwine to be entirely new to the most of you. Now hear me, people, and give your ears over to understanding. The Bible specifies that all flesh am not the same flesh, that there am one kind of flesh of men, another kind of birds, and still another of fish and fowls, and it must to be further said that all flesh of men am not the same kind of meat, for we has the flesh of the white folks, the flesh of the nigger, the flesh of the Injun, and at last the flesh of the Chinaman, all different in glory the same as one star differs from another star in glory. Listen now, and hear me, people, all heavens and all hells am not the same kind either. I am gwine to ask the brother that is set in the closest to that dog to please kick him out of this sanctuary for I proceeds any further, and I wants to again call it an. Listen now, of meat, for now hear me, people, and give your ears over to understanding. The Bible specifies that all flesh am not the same flesh, that there am one kind of flesh of men, another kind of birds, and still another of fish and fowls, and it must be further said that all flesh of men am not the same kind of meat, for we has the flesh of the white folks, the flesh of the nigger, the flesh of the Injun, and at last the flesh of the Chinaman, all different in glory
people.
the same as one star differs from another star in glory. Listen now, and hear me people, all heavens, and all hells, am not the same kind either. I am going to ask the brother that is setting the closest to that dog to please kick him out of this sanctuary for I proceeds any further, and I wants to again call attention to all of you to that scripture that says, cast not your pearls before a hog, nor feed holy things to dog. That am the third time now that I has seen that same dog trying to lift that kiver from off that sacrament beard, and I am going to ask you once more to leave them dogs at home in the future. Thank you, my brother. Be seated. Now hear me people and hearken unto my voice. Don't you all know that the Bible says that there am 7 heavens, and don't you all further know that with all that room that they ain't going to be in ways crowded, and that there will be plenty of room for all that gets there without mixing up the different races. All you niggers what think you going to sit down and eat with the white people at the feast of the Lamb am going to be disappointed. The white folks ain't going to stand for nothing like that, and sides that if you was in there, the way they am going to have their grub cooked wood and tea suit you know how, and you must just as well get that off your mind, for you ain't going to be there. The New Jerusalem ain't going to be no coon town, and it ain't going to have no oil mills, or compresses in it, and there ain't going to be no fruit stands or lunch counter on them golden streets.
The golden streets.
That town am going to be strictly for the white folks.
Like they got golden streets in Mississippi, huh? Just like they got the golden streets in Georgia that they set up with the golden plots of land, right? That they said that what y'all come on. The shit just be thrown in your face. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
They ain't going to have no niggers blocking up them pearly gates. No nigger is ever going to get any further in that town than Paradise Ally. The nigger settlement in heaven am going to be some miles out, on the east side of the river of life, and hear me people, and give heed to my supplication. The catfish in that river am going to be as big as a whale *******.
Catfish as big as a damn whale. You hear that shit?
Of course ****** and the watermelons.
Listen.
And sweet taters am going to grow wild and spontaneous. The nigger settlement in heaven am going to be some miles out, on the east side of the river of life, and hear me people, and give heed to my supplication. The catfish in that river am going to be as big as a whale ******** according to the size of the whale. Of course ***** and the watermelons. And sweet taters am going to grow wild and spontaneous all up and down that fertile valley. Oh my brethren, methinks I see that place now, dimly in the distance, through the twilight, and I thinks I can see with my mine eye, a 12-pound possum with his tail twined round a cinnamon limb and a young Plymouth Rock rooster roosting on the lot fence. And sweet taters am, the nigger settlement in heaven am going to be some miles out, on the east side of the river of life, and hear me people, and give heed to my supplication. The catfish in that river am going to be as big as a whale *******.
Get a fork, sit back.
To the size of the whale. Of course ***** and the watermelons. And sweet taters am going to grow wild and spontaneous all up and down that fertile valley. Oh my brethren, methinks I see that place now, dimly in the distance, through the twilight, and I thinks I can see with my mine eye, a 12-pound possum with his tail twined round a cinnamon limb and a young Plymouth Rock rooster roosting on the lot fence. ******, glory be to God in the highest. Amen. But brethren, hear me now, and despise not the messenger of the Lord. What am you going to do on that awful day of judgment, that day when the Lord of lords and King of kings comes down in all of his glory to judge this old world? That am not going to be any peerless court trial. False swearing ain't going to get you nothing there. That am going to be one time when you am going to get all that is coming to you, and then some, even and to the uttermost farthest whatsoever that must be.
We
Oh,
still
my
say that to
brethren,
this day.
it
Hold
makes
on. He
that am
said,
not
and then
going to be any
some.
perilous court trial. False swearing ain't going to get you nothing there. Dat am going to be one time when you am going to get all dat is coming to you, and then some, even to the uttermost farthen what some ever dat muft be. Oh my brethren, it makes me tremble, when I thinks of what you going to do when dat trial is over, and when the good shepherd
You okay,
gins to
baby?
separate the goat from the
What you
sheeps.
doing?
Oh my brother, I imagines I can hear him now saying, depart from me, you big bobtail billy goat from Riverside Plantation, get off the exhibition ground altogether, I never knew you. Then there will be weepin', wailin', and mashin' of teeth, and the wicked will be cast out into outer darkness without so much as a 2-bit 3. Burner headlight on, and on down into dat awful region, where the sun never shines, and where the thermometer stands 50 degrees below zero on the 4th of July. Oh my brethren, and sisterin, I beseeches you to beware of dat awful place where hell is frizz over all the year round, and where the devil am gwine to roll you in the snow. Throughout the countless ages of eternity.
Listen again.
Oh my, where the sun never shines, and where the thermometer stands 50 degrees below zero on the 4th of July. Oh my brethren, and sisterin, I beseeches you to beware of dat awful place where hell is frizz over all the year round, and where the devil am gwine to roll you in the snow. Throughout
the devil will wind you in the snow. But the devil is always associated with heat, hell, and high water, right? But your ancestors have always told you hell or high water. They have always told you about, what is it? Where is it? Something he just said. Let me go back to it. The thermometer 50 degrees below zero on the 4th of July. The 4th of July is a hot time when hell freezes over. We hear our ancestors say, when hell freezes over, that'll happen when hell freezes over. That'll happen when hell freezes over. Is that what he's talking about? It got to be what he's talking about. Let's go.
Countless ages of eternity. Oh my brother, think about what you gwine to do when
Frozen
dem
hell.
awful
Something else,
icicles
ain't
go
it?
sliding down your back. Oh, what am I gwine to do in dat awful hour? The North Pole, what Dr. Cook has done told so many horrifying and conflicting tales about, am a plumb tropical climate side of dat awful region. Oh, my brethren, the very words in your mouth am gwine to freeze hard and drap down on dat icy floor and rattle like tinklin' brass and clashin' cymbals, when you tries to cry out in your agony. The very breath of
The
your
gnashing of
nostrils am
teeth.
gwine to freeze and beat you in the face like a snowstorm, and hail and sleet am gwine to blow and beat on dat old leaky roof of hell continuously. Oh my brethren, let me
You hear
exhaust
it?
you to quit your cussin',
The
lying,
Antarctic, huh?
stealing, crap shooting, whiskey drinking, and backbiting one another to the white folks, and prepare yourselves for dat awful day what am bound to come. And now may the good
When
Lord have
hell
mercy
freezes
on.
over, right? Because our ancestors used to say that all the time. Why was that a saying? When hell freezes over. So he just said where the sun never shines. We know that in the caves, in the Caucasoid, that's where the sun never shines. It says where the thermometer stands 50 degrees below zero, even on the 4th of July. So it's always cold there. We know that's the southern states. They say it's southern, but it's they say it's northern, but it's southern. Oh, my brethren and sisters, I beseech you to beware of that awful place where hell is freezed over all of the year. It's all that awful place. So they talking about the Antarctic. Yeah, they got to be talking about the Antarctic, brother. You're right. Around and round. I was thinking that, but all I'm thinking about is my grandmother. I can remember her saying that when hell freezes over. So I'm thinking like, what the heck? Okay, I didn't want to keep stopping, but since you said that, this shit is crazy. So they're talking about the Antarctic. So that was what brought, that's what, when hell freezes over the Antarctic and everything that happened with bringing these people over, and they say when hell freezes, that caused the hell, allowing them to come in when there was a melting of it. This is getting interesting on this particular part, because this right here, it's just crazy. Let's just go.
Your poor ignited souls, for it is everlastingly too late shall ever be my prayer. Now,
24 hours
brethren,
of darkness.
and
Yep.
sisterin,
Yes, brother.
while the congregation stands,
Let me
I am
drop
going
a link
to
for my
ask
brother.
all of you to join me in singing,
It takes
It rains and it hails.
baby.
and it is
takes
cold and
two,
stormy weather. The
baby.
people weeps, and day wails, and Lord, I flees to thee for shelter.
Miserable. They sick.
On
They
the following
wailing.
morning,
The people
I
sleeping
saw
and
George,
wailing.
and
These
said,
people slept
George,
and well. It says sleeping and wellness. The gnashing of teeth. These people were miserable. Remember, they didn't have anything in the cold. They were deprived. They were what do you call it? Mishaps. You know, because of dysfunction. The crate people, the coming over, and the Cretans and the Cretans deprived of the iodine deficiency. They had brain deformities, physical deformities. I mean, all of that. This shit is crazy. But yeah, let's go. Any of my brothers want to jump up? Let's go.
What sort of a hell was that you were telling your people about last night?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
What hell?
Me. Yes, you. I happened to be passing Mount Everest last night and stopped outside and listened to you preach for a while. Oh, Shaw, Captain, said George, with a broad smile on his face. I know dat the Bible say dat hell am a lake of and bluestone, but den you knows a nigger well enough to know dat it don't do not good to try to scare him with hot weather, and dat if you wants to get next to him, you got to threaten him with cold. The Negro Law of Mississippi. There has been much written about the common law, the civil law, the statute, You, oh Shaw, Captain, said George, with a broad smile on his face. I know dat the Bible say dat hell am a lake of and bluestone.
It won't even let me put that in the chat.
That's crazy. Well enough to know dat it don't do not good to try to scare him with hot weather, and dat if you wants to get next to him, you got to threaten him with cold. The Negro Law of Mississippi. There has been much written about the common law, the civil law, the statutory law, and the so-called unwritten law, but we have another important branch of the law here in Mississippi, about which I have never seen anything written, nor do I know of any school in which this branch of the law is taught. It must be learned by experience and observation, and it is one of the most complicated branches of the law. I refer to the Negro Law. Any attorney from a foreign state might examine our Constitution and statutes and find that this was a common law state, and that, except where it was modified by some statute, the common law was in full force and effect, and would further find that, if he was a citizen of the United States, above the age of 21 years, of a good moral character, and could pass a satisfactory examination on the common law and the statutory laws of the state, he would be granted a license to practice law in all of her courts, upon his taking the oath prescribed by the statutes. He might also believe himself qualified to do so, but that is where he would make a very great mistake.
Double tapping,
the law which he has spent time and money to learn, and about which he has been interrogated on his examination for his admittance to the bar, is for the white people of the state.
The Iceman inheritance.
And
I think you told me that before, brother. I'm gonna try to check it out.
More than any other, and especially in the early years of his practice, is Negro Law, about which, unless he is native born, he knows absolutely nothing, and about which no book on earth, so far as I know, sheds the faintest ray of light. The Negro Law of Mississippi is a law of many parts, and is composed partly of the common law, statutory law, and unwritten law, and to be able to tell just which one of these several parts of the law applies in any given case is an art rarely, if ever, possessed by anyone, except the native-born attorney of the state. From the letter of our statutes, a stranger might justifiably infer that they apply to all persons within the state, without regard to race, color, or previous condition of servitude, but nothing farther from the truth. The judges, lawyers, and jurors know that some of our laws are to be enforced against everybody, while others are to be enforced against the white people, and others are to be enforced only against the Negroes, and they are enforced accordingly. Descent and distribution. Under our system of administering the law, a Negro has the same right to acquire, enjoy, and dispose of property, both real and personal, that a white man has, and when he dies in state, leaving any property, it is distributed according to our statute of descent and distribution, but beyond that the rule varies and shifts from one to the other, sometimes in favor of the white man, and sometimes in favor of the Negro. Civil actions. Whenever a civil controversy arises
Yep.
between two or more Negroes, it takes its regular course, and is either tried in the Justice of the Peace Court, the Circuit Court, or the Chancery Court, depending altogether which court has jurisdiction over the parties and the subject
I
matter.
told y'all gotta
But
take y'all
whenever any
stuff
minor
to Chancery
controversy
Court,
arises
period.
between a white man and any Negro working for him, whether civil or criminal, he generally gives the Negro an ex parte hearing in the barn or gin house, at which time and place he impresses his theory of the case on the aforesaid Negro with a piece of gin belting, or about 3 feet of the butt end of an old buggy trace, which is usually very effective, and the hearing is then adjourned sine die. There are some cases, however, that do sometimes arise between a white man and a Negro that cannot be adjusted in this manner, and when there is enough property involved to justify the employment of counsel to represent 23 the respective parties, it is always a wise move on the part of counsel representing the Negro to get the case in the Chancery Court on one ground or other, for by
Chancery.
doing so he dodges a jury of 12 white men who might feel embarrassed in reaching a proper verdict.
You
where
hear?
the con
That's the only way to do it.
controversy was between
Listen,
a white man and a Negro.
I keep telling y'all.
23 the respective
Then we just go over
parties.
everything with the Chancery Court. Just the other day, I showed you guys how important. I know people were going in and out the chat. I was like, y'all wake up, wake up. Do you guys remember? Anybody remember that? Listen.
End of an old buggy trace, which is usually very effective, and the hearing is then adjourned sine die. There are some cases, however, that do sometimes arise between a white man and a Negro that cannot be adjusted in this manner, and when there is enough property involved to justify the employment of counsel to represent 23 the respective parties, it is always a wise move on the part of counsel representing the Negro to get the case in the Chancery Court on one ground or other, for by doing so he dodges a jury of 12 white men who might feel embarrassed in reaching a proper verdict. Where the controversy was between a white man and a Negro, and he also avoids any chance of having the Negro embarrassed by their verdict. Under our system, if our Chancery Court once acquires or assumes jurisdiction over any matter for any purpose, it retains jurisdiction over it until it is finally terminated, and adjusts all of the rights of the parties, although they may be purely legal rights as well as equitable rights.
Equity.
And it is always much safer to try your
Haven't we been
Negro's
reading
case in that
equity?
court, if possible. Divorce and alimony. We have, in this state, 11 statutory grounds for divorce, and if in the course of his married career, a white man is so unfortunate as to get his domestic affairs in such a tangle that it becomes necessary to sever his matrimonial bonds to ensure his future happiness, he must allege, and must prove by 2 or more creditable witnesses, in addition to his own testimony, that his wife has at least crossed one of the boundary lines fixed by the statute, and he must pay all cost of the action, including a reasonable attorney's fee to counsel representing him, which ranges anywhere from $50 to $500 according to the social and financial standing of the parties, and must also furnish his wife with ample means to procure counsel of equal, and in many cases better, qualifications to represent her side of the case.
I just did a whole build on it the other day, brother. He was in the chat.
As the court thinks is in keeping with his ability to pay, and his wife's necessities and social standing demands, before his case can even be heard on its merits, or demerits, as the case may be, and if a decree is finally rendered in his favor, he is frequently required to pay permanent alimony ever afterwards, which ipso facto robs him of all of the pleasures usually attending a legal victory, and which renders him in contempt of court at any time should he fail to promptly pay the alimony on the day it fell due, and which would subject him to a term in the county jail without further notice. Or, in other words, the legislature and the courts of the state have never done much towards encouraging and facilitating divorces among its white citizens. Now when it comes to the Negroes, the rule is different. In the first place, a Negro does not need a divorce, but a great many of them want them and are willing to pay for the privilege of having them, and are always willing to pay the clerk 50 cents extra for a certified copy of the decree, if he will put a gilt seal on it instead of the ordinary impress, and 75 cents extra where the seal is attached to a little piece of blue ribbon with a scallop in the loose end of it. Negro divorces in this state are a staple just the same as cotton or any other native product, and are to be had by him, as a matter of course, whenever he wants one, at a fixed price, to wit, $25 for attorney's fee and $5 for court cost, in the Delta, and a little less in some parts of the hills. When a Negro decides to invest some money in a divorce, he goes to some attorney and makes his wants known, makes a cash deposit of $15 as a guarantee of good faith, and makes affidavit to the original bill prepared by the aforesaid attorney, and is instructed to be back at the courthouse of his county, on the first Tuesday, or the second day of the next term of the Chancery Court, and to have with him then $15 more of the lawful coin of the realm, and 2 good substantial witnesses, if he can get them, and he usually can, but in no case to overlook that balance of $15 which is so essentially necessary to carry his case through without any hitch. The first Tuesday of each term of the Chancery Court is set apart and specially dedicated to the trial of Negro divorce cases, and in order to expedite matters, it is customary with a great many chancellors, especially in the Black Belt, to appoint the different members of the bar who are not otherwise engaged, to sit as commissioners, or vice-chancellors on these cases, and if, after ascertaining whether or not Sir Vice has been had on the defendant, and after having heard the evidence, or some of it, he should recommend a divorce, the chancellor signs the decree, and the clerk furnishes the Negro with a copy of same, under the seal of his office, and that is the end of it. Criminal actions. There are many things declared by the statutes of this state to be a crime that a Negro may do with impunity and never be molested, while a white man for the same act would get not less than 10 years in the penitentiary. For instance, as above stated, divorces are not compulsive with a Negro, and he may have 2 or more wives at one and the same time, with or without being married to any of them, and no one care, and it is not uncommon for the presiding judge to instruct the grand jury not to take any notice of it in case it is called to their attention by any witness who might be before them on other business. On the other hand, if any white man should be guilty of the same offense, he would be promptly indicted, and if convicted, he could safely count on getting anywhere from 3 to 10 years in the penitentiary.
Oh, he don't got a privilege like
Gambling.
you, huh?
Under our criminal statute, it is a misdemeanor for any person to wager any money or other valuable thing on New York game of chance, or to play for money at any game of cards or dice, etc. But it is the unwritten law, and the unwritten law applies in this case, that all Negroes may play a game of chance with dice, commonly called craps, for money or any other valuable thing, on Saturday nights or any time during the first day of the week, commonly called Sunday, provided, however, that said game is conducted in a quiet, orderly manner in a vacant cabin or cotton house on the backside of the plantation. But it is also the unwritten law of the state that a white man must not any time or place, for either love or money or any other valuable thing, play a game of craps, that being recognized.
Why they can't play craps?
It is also the unwritten law of the state that all white persons above the age of 21 years may play a game of chance with cards, commonly called poker, for money and other valuable
oh my
things,
gosh, that's my game.
However, that said game is conducted in a quiet, orderly manner in some private place,
Yo,
after
I'm
business
gonna get all
hours,
your bread.
but a Negro must not, under any circumstances, play a game of poker, for love, money, or anything else,
I love
that
poker,
being recognized as strictly a white man's game.
but it's not.
Larceny.
I can
If
snap
a white
on
man
it.
be guilty of petty larceny in this state, he is either lynched, deported, or sent to the county convict farm for a long term. But if a Negro be guilty of petty larceny, he is either cursed, whipped, or made to pay the value of the thing stolen, or is sent to jail, all depending on what he has stolen and from whom he has stolen it. If he steal anything from another Negro, he is arrested, tried before a justice of the peace, and usually sent to the county convict farm to work out the fine and cost, especially the cost, but under certain circumstances the fine may be held up during good behavior, where satisfactory arrangements can be made as to the cost. If he steals from a white man, he is not usually arrested or tried at all, but is given one of those ex parte hearings above mentioned,
You
and
hear
made
that?
to return the article stolen
Listen
or
up.
pay its value,
Listen up.
according to the circumstances.
Listen up.
It be made
Go
as
back.
to the cost.
Go back. Go back.
Sini, he is either cursed, whipped, or made to pay the value of the thing stolen, or is sent to jail, all depending on what he has stolen and from whom he has stolen it. If he steal anything from another Negro, he is arrested, tried before a justice of the peace, and usually sent to the county convict farm to work out the fine and cost, especially the cost, but under certain circumstances the fine may be held up during good behavior, where satisfactory arrangements can
I ain't
be made
played
as
in
to the
years
cost.
though. Oh my gosh, years.
If he steals from a white man, he is not usually arrested or
He's
tried
not arrested
at all,
if he steals from a
but
white
is
man.
given
Why
one
is
of
that
those
though?
ex parte hearings above mentioned, and made to return the article stolen or pay its value, according to the circumstances. If he steals tobacco, whiskey, chickens, or watermelons from any white man for whom he is working, or for whom he has ever worked, nothing is ever done said to him about it at all.
Nothing
For it
said
is
to
well
him.
known to all white people that he cannot help taking those things.
What?
And
Or is this
is
they
not
just can't do shit
responsible
about
for
it?
his
Which
acts
one
in
was
the
it?
premises. And if any white man should ever undertake to prosecute him on a charge of this kind, he would have no more show before a Mississippi jury than a paper shirt in a bear fight. Concealed weapons. If a Negro is guilty of selling whiskey, cocaine, or carrying a pistol, he is severely dealt with, that being absolutely necessary to protect the lives of both the white people and the Negroes themselves, for there never was a more dangerous combination than a Negro, whiskey or cocaine and a pistol.
Cocaine?
He is just bound to kill somebody.
Damn.
And he does
Who
not
gave
care
it to him?
when he has a pistol and is
Leaf,
under the influence of cocaine or mean whiskey. On the other hand, all able-bodied white males above the age of 16 years, who live in the Black Belt, where the Negroes outnumber the whites 10-1, are all supposed to have pistols of standard make and size, and are supposed to carry them all the time, either concealed or otherwise, and are supposed to know how to use them to the best advantage on the shortest notice, and they usually do, notwithstanding the statute. On the other hand, all able-bodied white males above the age of 16 years, who live in the Black Belt, where the Negroes outnumber the whites 10-1, are all supposed to have pistols of standard make and size, and are supposed to carry them all the time, either concealed or otherwise, and are supposed to know how to use them to the best advantage on the shortest notice, and they usually do, notwithstanding. The statute says that if any person who carries concealed, in whole or part, an Bowie knife, dirk knife, butcher knife, pistol, etc., shall, on conviction, be fined not less than $25, and the weapon so carried shall be forfeited to the state, and shall be, by the sheriff of the county where the conviction occurred, publicly destroyed, etc. But this statute applies only to the Negroes and the people who live in the White Belt, and has no application to any white person who lives in the Black Belt. Homicide. The statutes of Mississippi also say that if any person shall be convicted of murder, he shall suffer death, unless the jury rendering the verdict shall fix the punishment at imprisonment in the penitentiary for the life of the convict. This statute only applies to a white man who kills another one about something else besides a woman.
It only applies to them.
If the killing was about a woman, he is tried by the unwritten law, and is either hanged, sent to the penitentiary, or acquitted, all depending on what woman the killing was about, and what the facts were in that particular case. But this statute does not apply to a Negro at all. If he kills a white man, and is caught, he suffers death in some form other, the time, place and manner of his execution depending altogether on who caught him. The sheriff's posse are the friends of the deceased. If the sheriff's posse are the first to get to him, he is hanged the fourth Friday after court adjourns. But if the friends of the deceased are the RST to get possession of him, he is executed at once, at or near the place where the homicide occurred, the manner of his death being always a matter of individual taste of the parties conducting the ceremonies.
Some of their own people.
When a Negro is indicted for killing another Negro, he is seldom, if ever, tried at all. The usual practice is for the court to appoint some young inexperienced attorney to defend him, then partly out of sympathy for the Negro, and partly out of sympathy for the young attorney, the state's attorney will allow the Negro to plead guilty with the understanding that the jury will fix his punishment at life imprisonment, and they will be instructed to bring in a formal verdict to that effect. This plan always works perfectly satisfactory to all parties concerned. The state saves the expense of a long drawn-out trial, the Negro is saved from being hanged, and the state gets another cotton producer on the state farm. If he is a young Negro, and in most cases he is good for about 20 years service at the least,
farm, not
and
the
ought
plantation.
to raise on an average of 10 bales of cotton each
How
year,
strange.
under the scientific methods used there, and this cotton, after deducting the customary shrinkage and graft, ought to net the state as much as $75 per bale, or a sum total of $15,000, which from a business standpoint, is worth a great deal more to the taxpayers than a public hanging. There are only a few of the unwritten rules of practice in this jurisdiction, the whole of which would fill a large volume, and are rarely, if ever, understood by anyone, except the native-born attorneys of this commonwealth. Coleman. Some years ago, in the early part of June, Dink Coleman, a gent of ebony hue, a driver for the Delta Transfer Company by occupation, and for many years past a resident of the city of Greenville, the county seat of Washington County, Mississippi, and which is situated on the east bank of the Father of Waters, sat upon the levee and watched the sun disappear behind the willow-fringed shore of the Arkansas side. He watched the towboat Henrietta drift slowly by with a long raft of logs in tow. He also watched the steamer Ruth land, discharge her freight, and resume her southward journey. He then arose, yawned, rubbed his eyes, stretched his arms and walked across Washington Avenue and down Walnut Street to the Twilight Cafe, a place of refreshment for colored folks only, and which was presided over by Ephraim Brown, likewise a gent of color and who was its sole proprietor and general manager. Soon after Dink had seated himself on a vacant stool at the refreshment counter, he and Ephraim had a disagreement about the age, grade, and quantity of hot catfish that had been served to Dink for the amount of money expended by him, to wit, 2 bits, or the fourth part of $1 of the lawful money of the realm. Hot words between them were soon followed by blows. Negroes ran through the open door, and some jumped through the windows. Crockery crashed against the floor, furniture was reduced to kindling wood, and pandemonium reigned supreme. When the dust of battle had cleared away, Ephraim Brown lay on the floor in the midst of the wreckage, with several ugly wounds on different parts of his person, inflicted by a certain deadly weapon, it, a razor in the hands of Dink Coleman, who was promptly arrested and placed in the county jail to await further developments.
Slice that man
as soon
up.
as time, nature, and local surgical talent had made sufficient repairs on Ephraim to enable him to appear in court as the chief witness for the state, Dink was given a preliminary hearing before His Honor, Judge O'Reilly, Justice of the Peace for District No. 3 of Washington. Brown, with the intent, him the said Ephraim Brown, to then and there kill and murder, against the peace and dignity of the state of Mississippi. When Dink was brought into court, and the charge had been read to him, he was asked the usual question, "How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?" To which he replied, "No siree, Judge, I ain't done none of them things to dat nigger. This is put up job on me, Judge. Dese here good for nothin' niggers is all got it in for me, Judge, cause I's nigger what minds my own business, Judge, and don't bother nobody. No siree, Judge, I.se. not guilty, sir. Never was rested for in my life, Judge, for nothin'. All the white folks in dis town will tell you dat 'bout me, Judge.
This right
And
here sound like some
besides
BS.
Judge,
They country,
dat
but
nigger
this
done
don't.
hit
This
me
sound
once
like an
with
old
frying
ignorant
pan on my
Negro.
jaw for I
Our
cut
people
him,
wasn't ignorant.
Judge.
They were trading, had
Won't some of
farms,
you gentlemen
homes.
over
Like, come
there,
on, stop playing.
please sir phone Mr. Jimmy Coleman to come over here right quick. He's my white folks and my lawyer." Mr. Jimmy, to whom Dink had referred, was the Honorable James B. Coleman, one of the most able criminal lawyers at the local bar. Before the war, Dink's father had belonged to Mr. Coleman's father, and the feeling which existed between him and Dink was similar to the feelings which usually exist between two first cousins who have never had any conflicting property rights, and Dink, as a matter of course, expected Mr. Jimmy to fight all of his legal battles for him. In due time, Mr. Coleman appeared in court, perspiring freely, and took charge of Dink's defense, or rather lack of defense. The state introduced witness after witness who swore that Dink had voluntarily entered the Twilight Cafe and without any reason, real or apparent, had proceeded to provoke a difficulty with the proprietor thereof, and then carve him up in the most approved style with a razor. Each of these witnesses was subjected to a grilling cross-examination by Mr. Coleman, which was greatly enjoyed by Dink, as well as all of the other Negroes present, but their testimony remained unimpeached. Dink offered no testimony, and after some wrangling between counsel for the state and the defendant, it was agreed that Dink should be placed under bond in the sum of $100 to await the action of the next grand jury, which bond was accordingly given, and Dink released from custody. On the second Monday of the following July, the regular criminal term of the Circuit Court of Washington County convened, with Judge Harrison, a true type of the old school, presiding. The weather was extremely warm and the courtroom was filled to overflowing with a squirming mass of humanity varying in color from the fair-skinned, blue-eyed, red-headed Anglo-Saxon to the jet-black Afro-American. The court was duly organized and called to order, the grand jury was empaneled, sworn, and charged. The docket was then sounded, after which court adjourned for dinner. Dink silently followed Mr. Coleman back to his office, dropped his hat on the floor and himself into an empty chair. Mr. Coleman also removed his hat, mopped his brow, seated himself in a chair by an open window overlooking the Mississippi, and gazed long and earnestly across its waters. For quite a while neither he or Dink spoke. Finally Dink said, "Mr. Jimmy, what you think about our case now?" To which he replied, "Dink, I don't like the looks of your case at all." Dink's lower jaw dropped, his eyes shone like twin moons, great beads of perspiration stood out on his ebony brow, and an expression of utter spread over his face as he said, "My God, Mr. Jimmy, don't you think we can beat this case?" "I am afraid not," said Mr. Coleman, "with the evidence the state has against you, Dink. It seems to me, from what all of the witnesses say about that you just simply went down to this joint and raised a rough house without any provocation whatever, and with that evidence against you, the jury, under their oaths, will be bound to convict you." "Then what?" said Dink. "Well, in that case, you will be sent to the penitentiary, that's what," said Mr. Coleman. "My God, Mr. Jimmy," said Dink, "I was just as drunk as Bildarl when I done gone down there and started all this trouble, and didn't no more know what I was doing then. Newborn merino lamb. Please sir get me out of this mess." "Drunkenness is no defense to crime, Dink," said Mr. Coleman, "but of course, I am going to get you out of it if I can, but am doubtful about being able to do it this time." "Den don't you think I had just better be moseying on off from about here?" said Dink. "Well," said Mr. Coleman, "as an attorney, I could not advise you to do that. You are under bond to be in the courtroom when your case is called, and unless you are there, a forfeiture will be taken on your bond." "What dad, Mr. Jimmy," said Dink. "Your bondsman will have to pay the amount of your bond," said Mr. Coleman. Yes sir, I see," said Dink. "But if you are there," said Mr. Coleman, "I think you will be convicted, and I know that if you are convicted, you will be sent to the penitentiary, there is no doubt about that." "Thank you, Mr. Jimmy, thank you sir. I think I begins to understand you now sir." "Yes sir," said Dink, and taking up his hat he bowed himself out of the office and down the stairs and was soon out of sight around the corner. Before court adjourned for the day, the grand jury returned several true bills, one of which was against Dink Coleman, charging him with assault and battery with the intent to kill and murder one Ephraim Brown, against the peace and dignity of the state of Mississippi. On the following morning, Judge Harrison seemed to be in a particularly bad frame of mind, due partly to the oppressive atmosphere, and partly to his advanced age. His paintbrush whiskers stood straight out, great beads of perspiration rolled off of his round bald head, and his eyes gleamed defiantly. It further appeared that no one who had been recently indicted was particularly anxious for that speedy trial guaranteed to them by both state and federal constitutions. First one lawyer and then another was wrangling for a continuance. Some had sickness in their families, others had certificates and affidavits from reputable physicians showing that their client or witness was physically unable to attend court at this time, and were further prepared to show that they could not safely go to trial without him. Case after case had been called and passed for the present, when the court called out in an irritable voice, "State of Mississippi vs. Dink Coleman, what saith the state?" "BD, Your Honor," answered the district attorney. "What saith the defendant?" said the court. No answer. "State of Mississippi vs. Dink Coleman, charged with assault and battery with the intent to kill and murder," called the court again. Still no answer. "Does any member of the bar represent the defendant in this case?" stormed the court, but no one spoke. "Mr. Sheriff."
Let me finish this. This is the last page. It's like, actually, I should have stayed on here because it's only got one more page. Yeah, let me finish this out, and then we're going to get over to this.
Said the court, "Where is the defendant in this case?" "I don't know, Your Honor," said the sheriff, "but I think he is out on bond. He was here yesterday, but I don't think I have seen him in here this morning." "Mr. Clerk," said the court, "enter a fine of $50 against this defendant for not being present in the courtroom when his name was called, and Mr. Sheriff, I want you to see that this fine is paid too." Then an old wrinkled-faced Negro woman as black as the proverbial ace of spades, slowly arose in the rear of the crowded courtroom, and pointing a withered finger towards the court, said, "Judge, may I have a few words?" "Would you?" "Sit down," thundered the court, and she automatically dropped back into her seat. "Mr. Sheriff," said the court, "I want you to keep order in this courtroom. Call the defendant in this case. Go to the window and call him. Dink Coleman, Dink Coleman, Dink Coleman, come into court," called the sheriff, but no response. "Mr. Clerk," said the court, "enter another fine of $50 against the defendant in this case. And, Mr. Sheriff, you go out on the street and arrest him and bring him in here before me, and I will learn him that the courtroom is the place for him to be when court is in session, and not out on some street corner." For quite a while now everything was quiet in the courtroom, save for the regular tick of the wall clock over the judge's stand, and the gentle purr of a small electric fan on the mantel at his right. When the sheriff finally returned, he reported that after strict search and diligent inquiry, Dink Coleman could not be found. The same old woman again arose, and looking dubiously around the room, said, "Judge, may I speak a few words to you?" "Yes," said the court, "what is it you want?" She said, "Ain't dat Dink Coleman you all been axin' about?" "Yes," said the court, "what do you know about him?" "Well," she said, "as I were comin' to town dis mornin', one seed Dink, 'bout 9 miles south of here, settin' on de V, and he told me, dat if I seed anybody up here axin' 'bout him, to give his regards and tell dat he's done gone to Arkansas. \V *** OV-/V0AV.S degree 1VO carat.
Okay.
*-0 O **O. *A% carat, %0. Carat R degree F degree carat A// carat %.
All right, guys. We're going to look at the top, the 10 top gold producing states. I wanted to show this morning with the bill, so I'm going to show it now.
Who's pumped for tax season? Let's get out there and crush those taxes. Who's with me?
We know some freelancers who are pumped.
That's the way to get out of here. I hope y'all enjoyed the build. More information. The more you know, the more you know, the more you grow. Going for that, bro. Watching. All the gold town, just Negro land. Look at these mounds, 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 number mounds, 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 mounds. Where do you think there's so much gold there? Because there are mounds, mounds, mounds. Golds go with mounds, mounds, mounds. See the mounds, mounds, mounds. Mounds, mounds, mounds. Negroes. Mounds, mounds, mounds. Good old Negro Creek. It's an iron mine. An iron mine that's located in Chelan County, Washington, on an elevation of 4,839 feet. On a what? A mound. All mine locations were obtained from the USGS Mineral Resources Data System. The locations and other information in this data have not been verified for accuracy. It should be assumed that all mines are in private property. Assume that's a damn lie. It belongs to the people of the land, the real people. Look at the view, a satellite view of it. Look at all that forestry and mounds on mounds, sitting on mounds. Sitting on mounds. Look how beautiful it is. Let's get back to this real quick because I didn't finish it. We're going to start it over. We out of here after this. Peace, love, and bliss to all. Thanks so much for coming through, guys. Have a good one.